What is going on, everybody? And here I am back with another ranting video. I originally wanted to do this video sometime last week, preferably last weekend, but unfortunately I got really sick last weekend and I was unable to do this video. Somehow I got food poisoning. Yeah, it's really strange how that happened. It still boggles my mind how I got food poisoning, because I didn't really eat anything out of the ordinary that day, but happened. Last weekend was really horrible, which I'm not going to go into the horrific, gross details about what happened, but yes, I would like to never have an experience like that again. And fortunately, I wasn't able to do this video, but now I am better, and I will now bring you this video. This video, which is kind of a long time in the making, because a lot of you know that I really don't care for The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. Now, before I go further with this, I would like to just set a preface for anybody who probably doesn't know me, who might be watching this. I'm a big Zelda fan. I love the Legend of Zelda series. I've been a big fan of the series since I started gaming. So, if anyone is going to come on here and try to say that I'm not a true Zelda fan, or that I don't like the series at all, you couldn't be more wrong. It's kind of strange how, me being a big Zelda fan that I am, that I actually don't like a game in the series. Especially a game in the series that a lot of people actually kind of like. And it was always kind of surprising to me that a lot of people, not only do they really like Wind Waker, but a lot of them put it as their favorite Zelda game. That's always baffled me. And that's not to say that the Wind Waker is a bad game, because it's not a bad game. I just don't think it is a good Zelda game. It's a good game by itself. I just don't think it really fits the series. At least what I think the series is. Another good comparison to that would be Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, if you look at that game by itself, it's not that bad of a game. It's got a really good creation system. It almost seems to me like that was a pre-Minecraft, with the way you're able to almost create anything and make it into a vehicle in that game. Now that I look back on it, it kind of reminds me a lot of Minecraft and how you can create things and stuff like that. But Nuts and Bolts as a Banjo-Kazooie game, it is horrible. It is really horrible. It is nothing like what the Banjo-Kazooie series was. It's nothing like it. To me, I think the Wind Waker is the same thing with the Zelda series. Now, let's get into what I don't really care for about the Wind Waker. And I want to start out with the one thing that people really don't like about the Wind Waker. And this by no means is me stating this as a fact. This is me stating this as an opinion. This is completely subjective. I really hate the art style they used in the Wind Waker. I do. Actually, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. I remember, and I don't remember what magazine it was. It might have been a Nintendo Power. It might have been a Game Pro. But I remember it was like 2001 or 2002. I saw some still shots for what was going to be the next Zelda game after Majora's Mask, and it was going to be shown off on the GameCube. At the time, Nintendo's brand new console. And I saw the still shots, and they looked great. I was like, oh my god, this is what the next Zelda game's going to look like. And Link's fighting with Ganondorf in a sword fight. It looks really cool. And I was like, man, I can't wait to see more of this whenever it comes out. And this, by the way, this was years before Wind Waker even came out. This was probably in the early stages of development. But I didn't know that at the time. Me being, how old was I? Like 12, 13 years old, I would say at the time. I didn't know any better. So then, about a year or so later, they released still shots of what we now know as the Wind Waker. And you should have seen the look on my face. I looked at that and I was like, this has got to be some kind of a joke. This has got to be some sick joke that Nintendo or somebody is conjured up to fool us fans, because that looked nothing like the early still shots that I saw. And it is a huge departure from what the previous Zelda games looked like. It really, really, really baffled me. At first, I did thought it was a joke. Like, I don't know if you remember in the older Game Informers, they had this section, it was called Game Enforcer with Darth Clark. I don't know if any of you remember that. I do. It was like a completely parody of Game Informer. I thought that was something like that. Oh, but little did I know that that was going to be what the next Zelda game looks like, and that really turned me off. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying that the art style itself is bad. It's not. I just really don't think it fits the Zelda series, because look at it this way. Look at it this way. When you look at previous Zelda games like Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, there's a lot of different things in that game that set different tones. For instance, you're walking through the grass, you're walking in farce, you're in a dungeon. They all set some type of tone, there's some type of mood, based on how it's being presented to you. And a perfect example of that is when you boot up Ocarina of Time for the first time. You go inside the Deku Tree. It's got the creepy music. It's got the creepy tone. It's got creepy enemies. And then when you enter the boss room, Queen Gomo's boss room, and everything gets really dark, really spooky. And then you hear the shuffling, because Queen Gomo's on the ceiling. But you don't know that, because everything's in darkness. And then all of a sudden you see a glowing little eyeball, and then you look up at it, and then it zooms right into Queen Goma. That set the tone for that particular moment in the game. Wind Waker really doesn't have that at any point during the game, in my opinion. The tone is exactly the same from start to finish, no matter what you're doing, and a lot of it has to do with how it's presented. The art style, everything is colorful, everything is bright, and it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in a cave, you could be in a volcano, you could be on a beach. Everything is all vibrant and colorful. And there's nothing wrong with being vibrant and colorful. I just don't think it fits the series, because a lot of times the Zelda series is about setting the tone. And that's what really, that's what really hooked me with the Zelda series. I mean, there really isn't, in my opinion, any greater feeling in gaming than when you face off with a boss for the very first time and you have no clue how to fight it. You have no clue how to beat it. And at the same time, the boss is presented to you as being a very, very threatening enemy. And that just adds on to the tension and the excitement. Wind Waker really didn't do that. None of the enemies in the game feel very threatening at all. A lot of them look goofy. Yeah, it goes back into the art style they chose and how everything looks cartoonish. And it almost seems like to me that when they were designing the Wind Waker, at least the Wind Waker that we know now, they had little children in mind. Not everybody, not all gamers, just little kids. And I can't help but think that way because of how they made the game. There's really nothing threatening in the game at all, and that's, in my opinion, that's one of the staples of the Zelda series. All of these bosses in the past games, and how they were very threatening. They were presented to you as being very tough and difficult. Like, what's a good example? Like, well, here we go. Moldorm from A Link to the Past is a big giant worm, and he's flailing his tail around, and there's that small platform you fight him on. It almost like you're afraid to jump down on that platform because you might get hit and then you get knocked off and you gotta walk back up again to fight him again. It adds on to that tension. And I love that about the Zelda series. I love it about that series. It's one of the things that series really excels in. And it was shocking to me that Wind Waker really never, at any point in the game, really got to that level. I mean, if I had to pick a fight in the Wind Waker that was even remotely memorable to me, and it was actually a pretty well done fight, it was the final battle with Ganondorf. It's actually pretty cool. It's a circular platform, and then you're surrounded by water. Like when Moses parted the Red Sea with that story. There's that, just, you're being circled by water. It's really cool, and they really did that well. Although the itself really isn't that challenging, it's still presented to you pretty cool. But that's it. I don't really remember anything else, any other bosses in that game. Yeah, sorry for this little cut in this video, but yeah, I tried really hard before making this video to remember any memorable bosses or any fights or pretty much anything gameplay related from the Wind Waker, and it's hard. It really is hard because there really is nothing in that game that left a lasting impression on me that I will remember for many, many years. Unlike the previous entries in the series, like Ocarina of Time. I remember pretty much every boss battle in Ocarina of Time left a memorable impression on me. Even some of the bosses in Majora's Mask, like the goat battle, or Gyat, or however the hell that boss is pronounced in that game. It's the giant mechanical goat boss when you're Goron Link, and you have to like chase it and race it. It's really cool. That was really memorable. There really is nothing in Wind Waker that does that. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Because when a lot of people, and this is what I've noticed, a lot of people, when they praise this game, and they praise it as one of the best Zelda games, they mostly do it because, at least from what I've seen, because they love the art style. That's the one thing that gets praised by the people that love this game. Is, oh, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's vibrant. I love it. It's great. But nobody really talks about the gameplay, the boss fights, the dungeons, which, by the way, there's only 5 dungeons in the Wind Waker. 5 dungeons. To me, that is a joke. That is a joke because having a lot of dungeons is very important in a Zelda game. Ocarina of Time had 9 dungeons. It had 9 dungeons. Pretty good amount. Pretty good amount. Majora's Mask had 4 dungeons, which I'm disappointed with. That's one of the things that disappointed me about Majora's Mask, but there was only 4 dungeons in the game. But you know what? At least I understand why that game only had 4 dungeons. It's because the game is set on the 3-day time limit. So, and when you keep resetting the clock in that game, you literally have to go back in the dungeon, and you don't have to rebeat the dungeon because there's a mechanic in the dungeons that allow you to just warp to the end if you've already beaten it. But you still have to revisit the dungeon to reactivate all the things that you have to do in that game to continue side quests and stuff like that. I know I'm kind of rambling on, but hopefully you get what I mean. You have to go at least revisit the dungeons over and over again every time you reset the clock in that game. So even though I would have loved to have more dungeons in that game, I at least understood why there's only 4. Why the hell does Wind Waker only have 5 dungeons? As big of a world as Wind Waker is, which is bigger than Ocarina of Time, by the way, why is it only 5? To me, there's no excuse. I don't know why they did it. Maybe they, once again, maybe it falls into, at least to me, their casualization of that game to make it appeal more towards children by making it easier. I mean, this is really the only thing I can think of, because why would you have a Zelda game, a normal Zelda game, with only 5 dungeons? Especially when you look at the previous entries in the series. It's baffling to me. It really is. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But there is one thing about the gameplay in the Wind Waker that I will always remember, is the sailing. The sailing. The freaking sailing. I thought it was boring. I don't think it worked. To me, once again, it's one of those things that it doesn't fit the series. Because one of the things I loved about the Zelda series is exploring the world, running around, finding hidden items, discovering hidden pathways. And then you go into, like, for example, you go into a cave and you see a heart piece, for example. Oh, I can't get this heart piece yet. I'll have to come back later and get it. Little side things like that. And you can only, and you just find all that stuff by just wandering around in the overworld. Wind Waker doesn't have that. Most of the time, you're just sailing into open abyss. It seems like it's endless water. And occasionally you'll find an island with a cave. Occasionally. But there's nothing interesting in that pathway. It's just sailing. Like, I remember a joke I used to love to make about this game is you could start at one end of the world of Wind Waker and then just sail straight to another end, and then you can walk away and go make a sandwich and come back and Link is still sailing. Yeah, it's boring, in my opinion. Now, that's not to say that I hate sailing. I mean, I liked sailing in Assassin's Creed 4. But see, I understood going into Assassin's Creed 4 there would be a lot of sailing. It's a pirate game. last time I checked, Wind Waker, even though it's got pirates in it, it was not supposed to be a pirate game. Zelda, to me, is not supposed to be a pirate game. It's supposed to be a Zelda game. And it just deviated a lot from what I love about the series. And it's... I mean, it probably could have worked if they added more islands, more dungeons, in between all the sailing. So you wouldn't be sailing for as long as you do in the game. That probably could have worked, but unfortunately they didn't do that. I don't know. To me, to close this, the Wind Waker was Nintendo's attempt to try to casualize the Zelda series. Because this was around the time that, and keep in mind, this was before the Wii came out. Nintendo was really starting to go into this direction of going more towards the casual audience. Not as hardcore as they did with the Wii, but you could, in my opinion, you could see the trends starting with the GameCube and some of its titles. And the Wind Waker, to me, is one of those titles, and that's one of the reasons why I don't care for the Wind Waker as much, because to me it's like a casualization of a game that, or a game series that, to me, has a lot of challenge when you first play it. And it's also a series that, because of how it's made, because of how it plays, it will leave you with memories that you will remember for the rest of your life. And the Wind Waker just really doesn't do that for me. I see Wind Waker as such a divide in the Legend of Zelda series. Like, it just divides the series. And the funny thing is, I think Nintendo almost kind of sees it the same way. Because when you look at Smash Brothers, Link is in there, but there's another Link in there. And he's called Toon Link, which is basically the Link from Wind Waker. That kind of says to me that we don't want Link to be remembered. Well, not really remembered, but we don't want this Link, or this version of Link, to be the long-standing version of that character. That's why he's called Toon Link in Smash Brothers, not just Link. So yeah, that kind of, to me, that shows that Nintendo kind of, whether they see it that way or not, they at least want to appeal to people who might not be fans of the cartoonish version of Link. I mean, he's called Toon Link for a reason. So, anyway, I think that's about it. Those are my thoughts on Wind Waker and why I don't really care for it. Now, I'm curious to see what you think about the game. Whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me, it's all good. Just as long as you keep it respectful, that's all I have to say. So, let me know what you think, and I will see you all next time.